So the verbiages that we're hearing lately in our mainstream media, like democracy, public education, oligarch. We've even had our Biden president bring in the oligarchs and call the oligarchs the Russians, or like Putin. And notice the Putin is the put in. So democracy is a word that we have in our mainstream as if we have to save our democracy. Our democracy will end. But what does that mean? If you are democracy, if we are democracy, but you're not democratic and a Republican. So what's the democracy to the public? Republic. Democracy is no different than aristocracy and tyranny. All right. You have to figure out what part and level of the democracy are they establishing to democrat in criticalizing your minds, to mine information out of your mind democratically, Republican or independent. How does that fall into a democracy? What is the democracy? What is the pecking order of the demo? We are that. We are the livestock, okay? And so this is the new book here, is Aristotle, the Politics. It was in this book here. It's interesting because it gives you analyses of arguments, of the arguments to which we have ordained this governing level of privilege, where govern is to ordain one mind of order to another through consent. So you govern over the mind by consent. So in this book is the analysis of the politics provided for the convenience of the reader. And this is important for our language, period, as we're all entwined into this English language brought through and derived off of other languages, but through curation, we are all in this format of this similarity. Have to read and understand what it is. So how did everything's come into be? The divisions, right? The titles assigned to them and what their responsibility is of the translation. Because right now I feel like we're being this lost civilization, which is a lost in translation, a spiral. And so it says that in the first analysis, it's going to break down the city and the household. It'll break down the city and man. It'll be the household in general. Then it'll give you slavery. Then it'll give you property and business. And then household rule in general. And did you ever have a home rule when you were in school? Did you have like home room? Yeah, home rule. All right, well, that's the first part I'm going to take us to real quick. Because then in this book too, it'll give you things about regime. We hear regime, but we don't know what is the regime. And guess what? You are the regime. You are the regime. The regime. The regime. For them to get off of you. The regime. And then it'll go into citizenship. What does it mean to be a citizen? The identity of the citizen, the identity of the city, the good citizen and the good man, the limits of citizenship. Okay? These is important factors right here, because this is all being verbiaged in our mainstream, in our devices, through our devices, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is. These are words that we are hearing right now. So let's go first to the city and the household, which is book 1. All right, so it's book 1, chapter 1. So, right here. Since we see that every city is some sort of partnership, and that every partnership is constituted for the sake of some good, for everyone does everything for the sake of what is held to be good, it is clear that all partnerships aim at some good, and that the partnership that is most authoritative of all embraces all the others. So, particularly, this aims at the most authoritative good of all. This is what is called the city, which is why you have your local government in its authoritative uh, city locally. This is what is called the city or the political partnership. Those who suppose that the same person is expert in political rule, kingly rule, managing the household, and being a master of slaves do not argue rightly. For they consider that each of these differs in the multitude or fewness of those ruled, and not in kind. For example, the ruler of a few is a master, of more is a household manager, and of still more then becomes an expert in political or kingly rule. The assumption being that there is no difference between a large household and a small city. And as for the experts in political and kingly rule, they consider an expert in kingly rule as one who has charge himself. Now, what king do you know has gone through a charge? And what charge is a self reflection? But a political rule and in political rule, one who, on the basis of the precepts of this sort of science, rules and is ruled in turn. But these things are not true. This will be clear to those investigating, like we are here, these words, in accordance with our normal sort of inquiry or iniquity. For just as it is necessary elsewhere to divide a compound into its uncompounded elements, for these are the smallest parts of the whole, so too, by investigating what the city is composed of, we shall gain a better view concerning these kinds of rulers. Basically, stating to you that the city is in and can be in no different than what your household is ran in your city, as you being, what is it called on your taxes? Or as you the head of household? Right, of course you are. All right, so for these are the smallest parts of the whole. So too, by investigating what the city is composed of, we shall gain a better view concerning these kinds of rulers, as well as both how they differ from one another, as to whether there is some expertise characteristic of an art that can be acquired in connection with each of those mentioned. Now, in these matters, as elsewhere, it is by looking at how things develop naturally from the beginning that one may best study them. First, there must be a necessity of a conjunction of persons who cannot exist without one another. And then on the other hand, that to exist without one or the other would be male and female, for the sake of reproduction, which occurs not from intentional choice, maybe it is intentional, but as in the case with other animals and plants, from a natural striving to leave behind another like it's one's self would be the intentional choice behind the reproduction. On the other hand, the natural ruling and ruled is the account of conservatorship, preservation. For that which can foresee the mind is the naturally ruling and naturally mastering element. For that which can foresee with the mind. While that which can do these things with the body is the naturally ruled enslaved, hence the same is advantageous for the master and slave, for we are all in the body of a natural rule and slave, that of being naturally animalistic planted into womb in an advantageous way. And so the female is distinguished by nature from the slave, for nature makes nothing in an economizing spirit, as nature makes nothing in an economizing spirit as smiths make the Delphic knife to be used in your economic lifestyle. But one thing with a view to one thing, and each instrument would perform most finely if it served one task rather than many. The barbarians, though, have had some arrangement for female and slave, and the reason for this is that they have no natural ruling element with them. The partnership of man and woman is that of female slave and male slave. This is why the poets say it is fitting for Greeks to rule the barbarians. The G, Reeks. And the assumption being the barbarian and slave are by nature the same thing. From these two partnerships, they call, the household first arose, and Hesioid's verse, or Hesiod's verse, is rightly spoken as Hesiod said, first a house, then a woman, and an ox for plowing. For poor persons have an ox instead of a servant. The household is the partnership constituted by nature for the needs of daily life. That's why the household is the necessity. Corandas calls it members, peers of the mess. In Epimenides of Crete, there's also the peers of the manger. The first partnership arising from the union of several households and for the sake of non-daily needs is the village. So the partnership that was the first partnership arising out of the union was several households, such as the freedman's plantation, and for the sake of non-daily needs. What is the sake of non-daily needs? By nature, the village seems to be above all an extension of the household. For its members, some call milk peers, are the children and the children's children. This is why cities were at first under kings and nations are even now. We are a nation called the United States, where we think we are under just a presidency, but who do you think the presidency is under? A kingship. For those who joined together were already under kings. Every household was under the eldest as king, eldor, lord, and so also were the extensions of the household constituting the village, the several households, the children's children, as a result of kinship. This is what Homer meant when he says that each acts as law to his children and wives, for men were scattered and used to dwell in this manner in ancient times. And it is for this reason that all assert that the gods are under a king, because they themselves are under kings now, or were. For human beings assimilate not only the books of the gods to themselves, but their ways of life as well. And I'll keep reading. Hold on.